morning, everybody. It's Andrew, the Urban Bayman. And I'm sure, as you can well imagine, I've been fielding an awful lot of phone calls since our last video yesterday. For those of you that didn't see our last video, it pertained to the new document that was prepared by Dame Green. And I want you to know, right, as I've discussed in my conversations, I'm not trying to suggest that what we did was right. All right, I'm just trying to provide a logical explanation. So I always say to guests when they visit during the summer, if you see something in Newfoundland that doesn't make sense, you probably don't want to point your finger. You don't want to offer judgment. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you're being critical, because there's always a logical explanation. That's all the video was intended, my video was intended to do. When, like I said, it doesn't make it right, okay? If anything, we should have known better. All right, when I read the article I talked about in the last video, the cover of National Geographic, the concept of peak oil. When I looked at that, I said, really? Right? How can you possibly talk about peak oil unless you're going to eliminate man from the equation? Man's ability to design, to create, to build, right? To create efficiencies, right? The thought that we had peak oil, I mean, we have the ability to explore. We have the ability to go back into old resources, to perfect our technologies, to make our extraction methods more efficient. The reason that I think we think this way, the reason I believe we think this way, is because Newfoundland has seen so many technological changes over the years. Right? Whether you study our history or are old enough to remember it, I mean, we've seen it all. We're an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Right? It's the closest point to Europe. The first transatlantic cable, the first communication cable that was laid all the way across the Atlantic, across the Atlantic Ocean. Cyrus Field laid a cable from Valentia in Ireland all the way across the ocean bottom. It landed in Heart's Content, Newfoundland in 1866. Right? Marconi received the first transatlantic wireless message at Signal Hill in 1901. Right? Alcock and Brown flew across the Atlantic, right, in 1919. Right? We saw a plane take off. Right? Adios, sayonara. Right? We'll see you later. In 1919, we have seen technology. We've seen its advancements. We've seen its power. We should have been aware that there was no way possible that we could talk about peak oil. And lo and behold, weren't we right? Right? Because while peak oil was a concept in 2005, by 2009, 2010, we had perfected the ability to extract oil and natural gas from our source rocks. Right? The shale developments that we have in the U.S. I mean, the U.S. in 2005 was out of natural gas. This is where the concept of peak oil came from. Right? They were in a terrible position. And then over the period of only 4 to 5 years, we developed the ability to extract. When they say that the U.S. now has, 1,000 times more oil in reserve than they've ever used. Right? So as Newfoundlanders, we should have faith in technology, and more importantly, it's time, or we should have faith in our own abilities, because this is a really unique place, an especially unique place with an unusual way of thinking. Look, we're an island, right? And as a result, we don't have a lot of outside influence. And the reason that I was so upset by the report is because I did find that it offered an element of shame and humiliation, and that is not what we need. That's not where we need to be placed right now. Now is a time for Newfoundland to be more confident than ever in those abilities that we have, in the history that we've shared, right? The fact that we look at things so differently. Right, one of the examples that I use, I've had the opportunity on a number of occasions through different engineering groups that we've toured. Right, I've visited the water facilities, the water treatment plants in St. John's. We've just built a brand new one here in Corner Brook. Right, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent on water treatment, and when you go through these facilities and you actually listen to what it is that they're telling you, we basically built water treatment facilities excuse me, to put chemicals into our water, to treat it for contaminants that don't exist. Right? When we sent our representatives to these water conferences, right? A confident Newfoundlander, when he's listening, says, well, no, boss, that's something we'll never have to worry about in Newfoundland. But instead, we came back and said, oh boy, we better do something about that. And in the end, the result is we end up wasting hundreds of millions of dollars. Right? Because the only real opportunity for a contamination of our water, right, whether it's in Corner Brook or in St. John, it's between the point where the water is actually treated and the delivery to your home. It's through the pipes in the city. If anything, we should have put filters in each individual home. We need to think about things differently. And that's all I'm asking. And in order to do that, guys, we need to be confident in our abilities, in our history. I'll offer you now a little story, a little reminder, and I love this story. I was touring a group a number of years ago, a bunch of farmers, right? The greatest bunch of guys, because in many ways, let's not kid ourselves, they think a lot like Newfoundlanders. Right? You're operating a farm, boy, it's a pretty independent operation, right? The cost measures are such that you have to be able to come up with solutions on your own. You can't just spend money willy-nilly. And as a result, I'm on this tour with these farmers, and we're having an incredible trip, and we're at the Rhines premises in Bonavista. And I notice these guys, they're all gathered around an old make-and-break engine. You know the one I'm talking about, the Putt engine. Very, very simple engine. And they are marveling over it. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm looking at it, boy, you know, it's a Putt engine. It's really simple. We've talked in some of these videos about engines and about the fact that you can't look at an engine now in a Corvette and say, Lord, suffer, how did they come up with that? You have to break it down into its components. And a make-and-break engine is about as simple as it gets. So what was it about this that could be so fascinating? Well, when I questioned them, and they were all standing around, guys, shaking their heads and talking, what a discussion they were having. I said, guys, what's going on? What is it that you're marveling at? And they said, boy, leave it to a Newfoundlander to make a stationary engine move. Right? A Putt engine, a make and break, an Acadian engine. They weren't designed for Newfoundland. These are stationary engines. They're designed as generators. They're designed to be used as pumps, as lifts for grain elevators, for cables. But Newfoundlanders took that engine and we put it in a boat and used that drive to turn a propeller. We thought about it differently. It's one of the beauties about living on an island where there aren't comparables, where we never necessarily saw how it was used. So when I read Dame Green's report and she talks about green initiatives, and let's not kid ourselves, guys, when I looked at that first, when I read this document first, now I'm not kidding, I thought she was talking about herself in the third person, right? Her green economy. And it took a while before I realized what it was that she was talking about. She was actually talking about an opportunity, a future in the green world, right? Creating green initiatives. And at first I said, well, my goodness gracious, in a time like this, we can't afford that luxury. But now standing back and having again looked at what Mr. Chenier did with his LNG, we have to start thinking in that exact same way. We have to use that confidence in our ability to think, to design, to build. And yes, apply green technologies, green developments to the resources that we already have. Can we extract our timber more efficiently? Can we extract our oil? I mean, our oil is already, right? And I'll remind you, there's 4 producing fields out there. Can we make that like the LNG shipment that Mr. Chenier delivered last week? carbon neutral, boy, I'd have to imagine, given the fact that we live in the greenest, cleanest place on the planet, I'd have to give that one a shot. Guys, I hope you're enjoying these videos. I ask you to subscribe to our channel. I want you to remain confident. We need to come together now. It's time for us to apply our very, very, very best thinking. It's not a time to cower. It's not a time to experience shame. Now is a time for us to be confident and recognize that Newfoundland is like no other place on the planet. I'm Andrew McCarthy. I am the Urban Bayman, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Subscribe to our channel.